Navigating career transitions requires equal parts courage, discipline, and faith. Our next guest today on the podcast is Michelle Schafer. I'm so excited to have Michelle. She is a self described career storyteller. Michelle and I are talking about how to make career development a 365-day a year project, as well as celebrating Michelle on the recent production, of her book. And I want to get it right. Cultivating Career Growth, Navigating Transitions with Purpose. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Jenny. So excited to be here today.
So, how does it feel to be introduced as a published author?
Oh my gosh, you know what? It's almost like it's so new for me that I still look behind myself thinking that
Yeah.
this person is talking about somebody else other than me. So I'm still processing it, but
Yeah.
it's so super exciting. It really is.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm just so delighted to have you on. And you have a really interesting background. So, for those of you that are sort of tuning in, I want you to think about the word transitions. And Michelle really has a wonderful background of transitions. She came from a banking world, she moved into municipal government, she was a not for profit. We were just talking about the Canadian Cancer Society, and
Yeah.
has landed in entrepreneurship as a fellow coach. So, we have bought the Kool-Aid together, Michelle. Um, there's so many ways I could go here. I guess, how do you think your clients would describe you as a coach? Maybe I'll start there. Like, what are you known for?
That's a really great starting question, Jenny. You know, one of the things that my clients will share with me right off the bat is they're grateful that I've had a similar experience to them. So I would say that I'm known to be somebody that not only cares but obviously brings empathy to
Yeah,
my career transition work with clients because
yeah,
as you mentioned, I've gone through my own transitions. I've been restructured twice, I've lost my job twice, wasn't my choosing, and I needed to reinvent myself both times. And when I let clients know early on that I have been in some similar situations and I've experienced job loss, which is painful in, for
yeah,
a number of
yeah.
individuals. They know that I'm bringing experience about their experience, that I remember what it feels
Mhm.
like, to write resumes and not get interviews. They know what it feels like to,
Yeah.
get interviews and not get the job. I've had those experiences. And so I bring those and clients really appreciate that I bring that understanding. They also really appreciate that I listen to them.
Mhm.
And especially for somebody who has just lost their job, maybe it's really come out of left field. They haven't, like, it's not expected at all. They really appreciate that I will let them tell their story and that I'll
Mhm.
be there. I'll create a really safe space for them to be able to share and to be vulnerable. And
Yeah.
some clients get emotional in those first conversations because they don't really know what to do. They are found themselves out of work and now they need to do something. They're not really sure what their career destination is, and they certainly don't have a plan that early on.
Yeah.
So a lot of clients will thank me just for being
Mhm.
there, thank them for helping to frame their leave story, helping them to talk about their job loss to other people where maybe they have some shame around it and they're
Yeah.
not really sure what to say to other people. So
Hmm.
so I feel, I'm glad that I went into coaching.
Mhm.
It wasn't a first choice for me. I mean, my own transition certainly led me to that,
Yeah.
but I'm so glad that at age 46 I finally figured out what I was going to do when I grew up.
Yeah. It's so interesting. What was the spark, the moment of realization around coaching? What was the thing where you're like, "Ooh, I think this is something I could really get into."
It's something that is so simple, and yet because it's so simple, we can actually overlook it. It was a planted seed for me. So, and the planted seed came courtesy of my very good friend Val. Val is a coach,
Okay.
and many years ago, when I was still working for the Canadian Cancer Society, we were just together and we were talking, and just out of the blue, she said to me, "Michelle, I never understood why you didn't pursue coaching as a career." And at the time, I was still working for the Canadian Cancer Society. I was working in this awesome job where I successfully negotiated 5 days a week down to 3 days so I could be at home with my boys when they were young. I was working with these volunteers that had amazing stories, like they were all supporting the cancer cause for very deeply personal reasons. And I said to her, I said, I love my job. I'm
Yeah.
not looking to change. But there was something about what she said that I just kind of tucked at the back of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And it stayed like that for over a year. Until then, I lost my job with the Canadian Cancer Society. And then it was that job loss that made me access that planted seed. And I thought, you know what? Maybe this is the universe telling me
Yeah.
I should really be looking into this. And so then I started networking with other coaches. Like while I was looking for work as
Yeah.
well, I was talking to coaches about, why do you coach and what's your
Yeah.
specialty and what are some of the rewards? What are some of the challenges? What coaching school did you go to and why? And I realized that this was something I didn't just want to do even just off the corner of my desk. This
Mm-hmm.
was something that I wanted to make, my life's calling. And that's what led me. It was that planted seed from a friend. And so I'll say to my clients, sometimes my clients will tell me similar stories. Like a friend of mine said, years ago that I should be, I don't know, like a fundraiser, for example, and they didn't do anything about it. Well, now
Mm-hmm.
this is the time where they can actually reflect on it and
Yeah.
maybe take some action. So, I say to
Love
all
it.
of your listeners, don't ignore those planted seeds. Maybe the timing isn't right when they come up, but when the conditions are just right and the timing is aligned too, it could be that thing that actually sends you down a path for a new career option. And
Yeah.
that could be deeply rewarding.
Yeah, I love your phrase, career storyteller. And you
Mm.
talked in your conversation about, helping people reframe the experiences they've had, helping not to be distrustful or untrue, but to come to terms with that. And one of those things about downsizing or transitions is it can also be an amazing gift, right? We're taught as coaches to what's the gift here, what's the opportunity here, and sometimes it can be really hard. So creating that space. I love that story about you becoming a coach. That's wonderful. Okay, I want to transition because we have so many places to go here.
No.
For our listeners, one of the things when we were talking, both Michelle and I do a lot of work on 360s. We work sort of some of those files where they bring in external consultants to come and help guide leadership development, whether it's a whole team or individuals. And you had this statement, how to make career development a 365-day-a-year project, because oh my gosh, it is not. It's like, oh, it's year end. We must do a 360. We must do a performance plan, etc. Um,
Exactly.
Tell me more about why are you passionate about this 365-day-a-year concept? What is it about that seems so important?
Yeah, I mean that's such a great place to explore a little bit more because I'm really excited about this because I see that there is not nearly enough time devoted to the career development of team members over the course of a year. And so for leaders,
Yeah.
you just mentioned it. Oftentimes leaders kind of, they make a bit of space, at the performance appraisal time or when there is a 360 and they ask that big leading question, where do you see yourself in 2 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And oftentimes people don't really know, but there's only maybe a few minutes that are
Right.
devoted to that question because it usually comes at the end of a 360 or at the end of a performance review. And so it might be in the last 5 minutes before everything wraps up
Yeah.
and then you're on to other things. So when we reframe and we don't just devote 5 minutes a year to our career development, but we make it that year-long project, we are focusing on ourselves. And when we think of who really owns our career development, it's not our leaders, it's not our organizations, it's not our friends and colleagues, it's us. And so we need to, really take steps to initiate conversations. We need to take steps to make sure that this is a focus over the course of the year. And
Yeah.
so, one of the things that your listeners can do is initiating those conversations with leaders. You don't have to wait until the end of the
Yeah.
year. Why not set up a devoted meeting with your leader and make it an hour? Like give it some really good space
Yeah.
where you can explore some, possibilities that are happening within the organization. You can even talk to your leader about different skills that need to be developed or mentorship opportunities that there might be, job shadowing. There's so many ways
Mm,
that we can develop skills. But until you actually take the steps to initiate those conversations, you're going to be maybe stuck with that 5 minutes at the end, which is just not nearly enough time for something
Oh,
that's so big that influences the rest of our career
yeah.
trajectory.
Yeah, I think there's a piece in that around. I love, can we just highlight nobody's going to take care of your career the way you will. And so
Yes.
stop. I find this with women, stop waiting for someone else to take your career in hand and sort of nudge you towards, like, let's take ownership of these
Yeah,
conversations. That's my number one takeaway.
absolutely.
I want to just highlight your ideas about portfolios, different files, mentorship, shadowing. There's so many ways you can get experience.
Yeah.
So here's a mic drop for our listeners. If you as a leader are not thinking about the next step for your team members, you can sure as heck know they're thinking about it for themselves. And so,
Uh-huh.
do you want to be part of the solution or part of the problem? And so, Michelle, what do we say to the leader that's like, I know, I'm supposed to get to it, but I have so many other things? Like, what's the motivator?
Yeah, I mean, here's a mic drop that really feeds into that. So last year I read a survey and it was done by Robert Half, and they're, like a placement agency. They have lots of different positions that are available for people who are looking for work. And they did a survey in Canada and saying that 42% of individuals were going to be looking for a new opportunity over the course of the year. And why were people looking for those opportunities? It was because of a lack of growth. There was a
Mm-hmm.
lack of growth within the organization. So people were actually looking for new opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah.
Well, for me, like that's a huge message for leaders. That's a really big eye opener. And so, Jenny, the leader that comes to you and says, I want to do this. I want to make time for these conversations. I just don't have time. 42% of
Percent.
people leaving or possibly looking at leaving, that's massive. And so, my question back to those leaders would be, what's the cost if you
Mm-hmm.
do nothing? Like, so if you do nothing, what's going to happen to your team members? Well, guess what? They're going to be walking out the door, finding those great opportunities somewhere
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like leaders have to make this time. Like you
Yeah.
can't afford to not make the time. And there's really easy ways in. So if a leader is thinking, oh my gosh, this sounds really complex,
Heavy,
it sounds
heavy,
really
Michelle.
big, yeah,
Yeah.
very heavy, you can ask some really easy questions to team members to gain some insight. So, initiate that conversation with your team member and ask them, for example, what's something about your work that really fires you up, that gives you energy?
Mm-hmm.
Like, talk
Mm-hmm.
about that. But then also ask them, what are the aspects of your work that you know that you have to do, maybe you're really good at them, but they really drain that energy?
Yeah.
And then a third question could be, what are some things you would like to get involved in with the organization? Maybe it's a project or it's leading, maybe
Yeah.
co-leading a team. What are those opportunities that you'd like to access, but you just haven't been able to access, or they're not part of your job right now? And I find just asking those three questions will open up the conversation to have some really rich dialogue around, yeah, what are the things that are
Mm-hmm.
energizing this person or taking energy away? And what is kind of the way into those possible opportunities that as a leader, like, listen in and lean in to when your team members are sharing about the things that they want to do, because that's your clue and your cue to be able to
Yeah.
provide those opportunities to them, either through mentorship, job
Yep.
shadowing, introducing them to somebody else in the organization. Any of those things can help to deepen their skills, can broaden their experience. And when you have employees that are engaged, they feel like their leaders are with them, their leaders want to see them develop, then those are individuals, because they're more engaged, the chances are they're going to stay. And that's really what you want to do as a leader. You want to be able to engage and support your team members in a way that they want to stay on with you in your organization.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm smiling. If you're watching the video, I'm like smiling, and because I'm like,
I noticed
and
that.
Michelle, those are all open-ended questions that you
Mhm.
offered. They're all coaching questions. They're
Yes.
curiosity questions. So
Mhm.
beware of assumptions you have. Because as I was hearing this, I was thinking, oh, so many people aren't opening these doors because they feel uncomfortable. They're worried what their junior reports are going to say.
Mhm.
And I think if you approach it, you and I are steeped in the world of coaching with curiosity. It's really important to open the container and be
Yes.
um, okay with whatever comes out. I have so many people that are afraid of opening the container because they don't know what they're going to hear. But here's
Mhm.
the thing about conversations is once you open the container, you at least are going to know something more than you knew before, Michelle. Like they may or may
Exactly.
not be keen on leaving. And I think that learning part of helping them see, I love those questions about what fires you up. What do you love in
Yeah.
your day? What's your
Yeah.
energy suck? Those
I
are really
know.
simple. And let's put those in the career bucket. Let's put those in the career planning bucket.
Exactly. Well, and to your point too, Jenny, like, when you open the lid on that container, you know, for what employees are really needing out of
Yeah.
their leaders right now is safety and conversations. They want a safe space where they
Yeah.
can share things, whether it's feedback, whether it's information about their own career development. And so when a leader demonstrates,
Yeah.
takes that lead and takes that initiative, they're showing that employee that
Yeah.
this is a safe space, and I
Yeah.
want you to share because this is going to be meaningful for you. And we can take a step back and think about, so what? So we open the conversation. Let's say they say, you know what, I don't really see anything for me here, like
Yeah.
I am going to need to look elsewhere. So what? Like, so we can still do things as leaders to position that person, even if they're going to be leaving down the road, to develop their skills and
Yeah.
set them on their way. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the best leaders that I had were ones that weren't trying to protect me, trying to protect their team, trying to get me to stay. They were the ones that looked at me and said, you know what, you have potential to do some other things. And yes, that is going to mean
You're
that
going to
one day
need,
you are going to leave my team
yeah.
and leave,
Yeah.
we won't be working together. But
Yeah.
that person will have mentored me, would have, helped me to develop in a
Yeah.
way that really served me well in my career. I mean, I've gone back to some of those leaders to say, like, do you know what you did for me? Like, that was so impactful. And so, leaders don't have to be afraid, because keeping somebody and trying to
Yeah.
protect them
Yeah.
when they are meant for more, they're meant to do something else. Maybe they're meant to pivot completely
Yeah.
and do something new and take those transferable skills into a new path.
Yeah.
That person is going to be engaged if they develop their skills. But if you try to quash that energy, if you try to like put the lid on things and try to keep them where they are, that is
Yeah.
not going to help the team member. It's not going to help your team. It's not going to help the organization. And it's sure as heck not going to help you as a leader. So there's so much to be said for empowering our team members, opening up that conversation and seeing what we can do as a leader to help broaden their experience and help to
Yeah.
deepen their skills. It's just going to inform their career path down the line.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about there's always somebody listening who is really struggling with a boss, right? I just want to speak to you for a minute
Yes.
and is feeling like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to, how do I do this? And I want to remind you of what Michelle and I spoke about earlier, that we are responsible for our own actions. We're not responsible for the
Yeah.
behaviors and emotions of other people. I mean, Mel Robbins has a whole book called Let Them, right?
I just got it.
I
I'm
know.
deep in it.
I know. And,
Listen.
I think that idea that, her concepts are not new, but she does such a great job of simplifying them for people.
Yeah.
And, I'm in knee deep in a conversation about compassionate accountability right now. I'm obsessed with this idea of compassionate accountability, that
Mhm.
you can be kind and compassionate, but also hold
Yeah.
people to expectations. And part of that is, and I want to say this out loud, you are not responsible for your boss's behaviors and actions.
No.
So release yourself from that, but don't let it be a barrier to your own growth. So I have had great success, just speaking about career development. Okay, so your boss isn't doing it for you. Okay. So where can we go? Can we go to another peer, another leader within the organization, invite a mentorship conversation, ask permission from your boss? Would it be okay if I started meeting with your senior vice president of sales? Find someone within your professional organization. Like, it doesn't have to be, I think that's a very passive way of it's not about personal leadership when you're, well, I can't do anything because my boss isn't
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and what you're sharing there too, Jenny, I mean, really, I'm going to draw a bit of a line, a connector to individuals who look for work outside of an organization and ones that are exploring opportunities within. And, when I meet with clients, especially ones that are wondering whether it's time for them to
Yeah.
leave. And so we have the conversation around what you just mentioned, like, have you talked to your leader? What was that conversation like? How did you approach it? What kind of questions have you asked for opportunities, like all that? A lot of people will say, well, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And so, but when we talk about, okay, well, let's say you're looking for work outside the organization. Well, how are you going to embark on that search? Oh, well, I'm going to reach out to organizations. I'm going to talk to, leaders, find out about the organization, find out about maybe where my skills fit, learn about them. And I say, so exactly what you just shared that you would do outside of the organization.
Yeah.
What would that look like if you were to do the same thing inside? If you were to network within the organization, like talk to, people in other teams, talk to leaders in completely different functional areas to learn more about what they're doing, maybe how you can gain entry in those. Well, what would that look like? Oh, yeah, I hadn't really thought of doing that, is
Yeah.
usually, what comes
Yeah.
back to me. And I say, like, the same kind of strategy that you would use outside with, having conversations, because we can learn so much
Yeah.
from having conversations with other
Yeah.
people. Well,
Yeah.
what if you did that inside, and then you're building relationships, you're learning about other areas, you're actually alerting other leaders about things that are interesting to you so that maybe they can let you know when there's movement within their
Yeah.
team. There's so much power, and it's empowering as well for team members to be able to do that, because now they're taking action. So the difference between a passive approach to career development and an active one
Hmm.
is the passive one, you just kind of wait for stuff to happen. So if you're in an organization, you're just waiting for those job postings and you don't see anything and you think, oh, well, there's nothing here. Well, an active approach is actually, taking the lead on having a conversation with your leader, having
Yeah.
conversations with other people, updating your resume, like getting ready to make a progression within the organization. There's so many things that we can do inside that we forget about oftentimes.
Is it true? I heard this one time that like the jobs you see are only 50% of the jobs. Is that true that there's a second network underneath?
Yes, it does
Okay.
actually
Okay.
exist. It's interesting because even internally, where organizations oftentimes are, I mean, they're required to put up job postings, and especially let people inside of the organization and
Yeah.
alert them to those opportunities. The thing is that that job has been under development before it gets posted. So even when jobs are posted, you can be part of the conversation, like by talking to other people and letting others in the organization know about the kind of things you want to do. Like, for example, if somebody wants to step into leadership, maybe they're an individual
Yep.
contributor right now, but they
Yep.
want to take on a leadership role. Start talking about that and start doing some things.
Verbalizing.
Oh, yeah, that you're developing,
Yep.
because
Yep.
before that leadership job gets posted, other people in the organization will know that, hey, like Jenny would be perfect for that. Like, I'm
Yeah.
going to let Jenny know, heads up, Jenny, this is going to get posted, but I just want to let you know so you can get ready. Those kind of conversations happen. So,
Yeah.
so yes, it's
Yeah.
so important to, talk about our career aspirations and, not just talk about it, but do things that will actually put you in the path of those things. When those opportunities come
Yeah.
up, you can, make sure that you're really aligned to compete for them.
I've always wondered that.
Oh
Love
yeah.
that. Yeah. So I'm just thinking to my listeners, there is a really great podcast with Allison Fuller that talks about all the ways women sabotage themselves in interviews. So I just want to flag that for folks to listen to. I think it's an excellent interview. I can't believe how quickly the time goes, Michelle. So a couple of final thoughts here. I want you to have some space to talk about your book as well. But
Sure.
as far as making 365 days a year, really redoubling down on career growth and really those professional development conversations, what I heard make sure you're using open-ended questions, make sure you're from a leadership perspective, make
Yeah.
sure you're bringing up the subject, even if it's in a casual way or setting up a specific time. I think quarterly is a good cadence actually for making sure you're at least having one discussion about things. Any other words of advice for, I guess, from the job seeker's perspective of how to stay on radar?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, in addition to those suggestions, which are great, I liken career development to going on vacation. Maybe it's not as much fun as going on vacation, but the elements are the same, which is you need to have a destination and you need to have a plan. So in terms of keeping yourself on the radar, don't just randomly just start
Yeah.
talking to people and not be organized and
Yeah.
not know what you're going to ask. Like, you need to know kind of where you're
Yeah.
focused. So doing some reflection yourself on what's work that gives you energy, what's the stuff that drains you, what are the opportunities
Yeah.
around you, and then start to create a plan. And so when you create a plan, this is where you can involve your leader. So maybe the plan involves meeting with
Yeah.
one new person a month and have coffee and learn more about what they do and bring your great questions, those, open-ended,
Yeah.
curious questions that will get you the information that you need. Maybe it's, doing some research and signing up for a course. Maybe
Yeah.
it's taking advantage of professional development opportunities within the organization.
Yeah.
So how you can stay on top of things with your leader is create that plan, and then you can take actions towards that plan. Keep your leader up to date. And I would also say, like, ask for what you need. Ask your leader to introduce you to somebody else. Ask your leader to, maybe take something off of their own plate. Maybe you can offer to, lead a project, or, lead a working group, or like something like that.
Yeah.
Ask your leader for what it is that you need for your own career development, and that will keep you top of mind with your leader, and also your needs top of mind with your leader, so that they have a better understanding of what it is that you're looking for and how they can help. And what I found is, generally speaking, people want to help. They just want to know how they can help. So when you go to your leader with a very targeted ask, it makes that conversation certainly richer. But for all the leaders, also, you don't have to wait for your team members to come to you. You can initiate these conversations, and it might surprise them, because a lot of team members aren't used to leaders making career development a priority in the course of day to day. So surprise your team members, schedule a meeting with them, open up this conversation, and don't just do it once. Keep that top of mind and bring it into your one-on-ones.
Yeah. Don't just do it once and then run away. I love that. And open it up for a container. There's so much great value in there. Thank you for those thoughts, Michelle. Now, this book, we can buy it on Amazon. Yes.
Yes,
there it
you
is.
For the video, I'm holding it up actually in the video. So yes, you can buy it on Amazon. I was thrilled that it went to the #1 spot when it launched.
Amazing.
And
congratulations.
really
Celebrating you. That's fantastic.
and it's, it's interesting. It is a book that really is focused on the very things that we're talking about today. It's all about, how to develop and evolve your career. And this book is written for individuals who are maybe not in love with what they're doing anymore, or seeing that there's potential to do more, and they're not really sure what that is and how to get there. It's also meant for individuals like any of your listeners who know somebody who has found themselves out of work suddenly. There's a lot of job loss in our
Yep.
market right now. So chances are just about every listener probably knows one
Yep.
person, unfortunately, that's looking for work. This book is perfect for those individuals as well, because it takes you really through, step by step, starting from reflection, these questions that we were talking about today. What's the work that energizes you? What's the stuff that you're known for? Maybe it doesn't give you energy anymore. There's a number of other reflection questions, but then the strategy there to help you build out a plan. How do you update your resume? If you're competing for a job, this goes for competing internally as well. How do you prepare for interviews? How do you start those networking
Yep.
conversations if you've never done it before? My book will give you not just the strategies and the tips, but
Mhm.
it's part workbook as well. So
Oh,
you
I
can
love
take your
that.
notes, you can build out your plan, and that way you've got a really robust career development plan that you can start to action and lead you to work that energizes you, certainly for a
Mm.
team and an organization that believes the same things that you believe in. That's my Simon Sinek why. I believe that everybody is entitled to that, and
Mm.
and my book really supports that as well.
Ah, I love it. I love it. My takeaway is it's like a vacation. You have to have a destination and you have to have a plan to get there. And you
Yes.
must bring your sunscreen. So, having
Yes.
all those things along the way, Michelle Schafer, it's been a real pleasure having you imparting your thoughts, your ideas. And I would say my other part from today is, start with those small steps. Start with something, Michelle, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Start with the small steps. I
Yeah.
mean, baby steps
Hmm.
lead to bigger steps along the way. And for all of your listeners too, I mean, if they're interested in knowing like more about what some of those, smaller steps can be, you can access my website, which is
Okay.
mschafercoaching.ca. And if you're interested too in just, getting a taste of what it looks like to start planning for your own career, on my website, if you click on the My Book tab, you can actually download a free chapter of my book,
Perfect.
and you can sign up to learn about my other offerings on the coaching front.
Yeah.
So there's so much that we can do, Jenny, and I'm so happy that you invited me to talk about this, because we all have a role to play in our own career
We
development.
we so do. And I just want to flag Schafer is Schafer, just in case you're wondering, mschafercoaching.com. Is that correct? Yep, perfect.
mschafercoaching.ca.
.ca, excuse me. I
That's
wanted
okay.
to spell your last name just in case, because I'm sure you're on LinkedIn. It's always
Yes.
such a pleasure to have coaches on the podcast, right? Because we're so it's such a wonderful discussion we've had here today. I hope it's been of value to our listeners. I'd like to thank everybody for making it all the way to the end. Michelle's content details, links are all in the show notes. If you have not yet subscribed, I would really encourage you to subscribe. And I'll tell you why. It's not just a tiny little gesture on your part, but it has this huge ripple effect through the community. The more subscriptions I get, the more the algorithm finds me, the more people can get access to the Underdog Leadership Podcast content and all of these amazing guests that I'm grateful to have. The podcast is one of my favorite things I do. I get very excited when I get up in the morning and I know I have to do a podcast. And it's funny because the kids will see my hair, Michelle. The kids will see my hair in the morning. Oh, mom, you have a podcast today? I'm like, yeah, I do.
Podcast hair.
Podcast hair.
That's awesome.
I love it. Well, listen, folks, have a great day. Go be great. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank
And
you.
until next time.